Wow. It's going to happen. The retrial of the century is going to happen. Jury selection continuing, moving, I think, quicker than folks thought it would move. They're going to get a jury. And at the end of the day, this trial will happen. But what we're talking about today, and we'll get into a whole bunch of things relative to the retrial of the century of Karen Read, but there's something else that happened. The judge is being sued. The judge is being sued for prior restraint of speech in the limitations she has set on people who want to show up at the courthouse and exercise one of the amendments, which, that's right, the First Amendment, their First Amendment rights. She has shut them down to a certain extent, pushed them even further away from the courthouse, including private property, property that is public property that people gather on. So we're going to talk about that and ask the question, has Judge Cannone crossed the line? I'm Vinnie Politan, lead anchor for Court TV. It says so right below me, so I know it's true. You can watch me every night from 8 to 10 on Court TV. But with me here on the Tangent Podcast is Al Wunsch III. He's over here. Al.
Viva la Tangentistas, everyone, and greetings.
And in the bottom row, there he is, the radio legend, Jonesy. And you know the deal. It's Friday, Jonesy. What does that mean?
Yeah, I'll take Jonesy to take the square.
Beautiful. This is the Tangent Podcast.
It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Vinny has the blue eyes, Al cracks the jokes. Jonesy stays behind his shades, entertaining all the folks. It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Load up all your comments, hit those super chats. Let's go smash that like button, so we can all have a blast. Vinny, Al, and Jonesy on the job. They're the Sugar Hill Gang of true crime. They're telling stories of days gone by. They take crime and turn into a good old time. It's Vinny and the Tangent.
Welcome. That is the soundtrack of Friday, folks. That is your Friday soundtrack. I know it's running through your head right now. Great to have you aboard. Today, it's all about the retrial of the century getting started. It's happening already. Jury selection is part of the trial. But I consider the true beginning of the case, for my purposes, those opening statements. But for the lawyers, this is perhaps the most important part.
Absolutely.
Picking the people who are going to sit in judgment. Like,
Absolutely.
Who are these people?
Yeah. And that's the question I always ask on a jury thing. It's like, who are these people? And it really is key to your trial strategy on who you get into the box and how you use your preemptive challenges, which means you can just challenge without having to give a cause or a reason, and also why you have challenges for cause, which means that they said something that kind of left a bad taste in your mouth, and you can get them off that way. So this is the straw that stirs the drink. If you don't have the right jury in there, it doesn't matter what your opening is.
Now, I was looking at some of the stats. About half of the jurors, it seems, are reporting to have an opinion on the case. About half from the jury pool, but they're moving quickly. I mean, as of yesterday, they had 10 already.
Yeah, 10 and they're going to be looking to do 16.
Right.
Okay, so that gives you the 12.
Last time the judge brought in 19, qualified 19, then somehow they eliminated 3 of them. I don't recall exactly how they did that, and they ended up with 16. 12 who will sit and 4 as alternates. Last time, I believe they used 2 of the alternates. You need the alternates because people get sick. High-profile case. It's in the news all the time. Someone could hear something or see something that might not make it possible for them to continue on the jury. But I love the jury selection process. I think it's the way we do it in the United States is the best way. You get people from the community sitting in judgment. And speaking of the people in the community, those who often wear the color pink, are not happy right now. The judge has expanded what they're calling the buffer zone, and they've put up like signs, like actual street signs saying buffer zone. And the thought is that we need to move people away from the courthouse so we don't taint the jury, right?
Yep.
Now, here's and the region has apparently been expanded to a certain extent, because there's a certain spot where they were all gathering last time, and they've pushed them further out. One of the jurors, I think, reported being able to hear people outside.
Right.
Okay, that's fine and good, but they didn't send her home. Like it had no influence. I interviewed one of the jurors. I said, he said none of that had any influence on anything.
Okay.
But none of it did. Let me give you an example, Al. I work at Court TV. Your front row seat to justice. The only thing we do, Jonesy, Jonesy, the only thing we do is cover the highest profile cases in the nation. Okay? I was down in Orlando. There was a woman on trial there. She was not a woman that I like. She was public enemy number one, the most hated woman in America. There were people chanting with signs right there outside of the courthouse that entire trial. And trust me, none of them were supporting that woman whose name starts with a C.
Oh, okay? It wasn't Roseanne Barr?
It was not Roseanne Barr. It was a woman who was charged with taking the life of her own daughter, Kaylee Marie Anthony. Despite what was happening outside the courthouse, which was an overwhelming, it was like pitchfork time, okay? That's what you had there throughout the entire 3 months that I was there. And it did not, in one iota, impact the jury.
Do you know?
As you would say,
you know, and here's the other.
Never mind. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You go, Jonesy.
No. No.
No. You go. No, yeah. Jonesy's up.
Well, I was simply going to say, as you had said in the past, well, that's Florida.
Well, my point is, okay, let's go to California. O.J. Simpson, there were, throngs of people there, chanting, signs, everything. The jury bases it on what happens in the courtroom. It does not prejudice anyone. Jurors take their job seriously. I know. I was a juror.
Okay. There is no problem putting a buffer zone. They do it all the time. It works. It's allowed. Okay. We see buffer zones around abortion clinics. We see buffer zones around other things. And they've all passed constitutional muster as long as there is a legitimate reason for it. And if a juror did hear something that was going on and there was noise that was going on, do you really want that when they're, sitting in there and they are going over the evidence and they're debating and they're doing this? Do you want people right up their nose when they're walking into the courthouse? No. Okay. There is no reason why they can't put a buffer zone. And that is not in any way curtailing free speech by any stretch of the imagination. You're there. You can say what you want. You can do what you want. Okay. But, free speech is not,
the jurors have X-ray vision.
Well, I don't know if that's a question. I asked that question in voir dire, but I don't know if they asked it in this one.
Jonesy, are you wearing those X-ray specs that they used to advertise in the back of the wrestling magazines?
No, I wish I had sent away for those to see if they actually worked.
I did.
You can see through your hand. You can see the bones, and you can see through people's clothing and stuff.
Yeah,
from what I
that didn't work. Believe me.
Didn't work. You actually got him, Al?
Yeah, I did, and I brought it to class. And
wow,
Julie Pietro still had clothes on when I was looking at it.
You couldn't see through the clothes of Sister Mary Elephant?
I didn't go to Catholic school for grammar school, so I only had that for for.
Here's my point, Al. Least restrictive, right? When you start restricting the constitutional rights of citizens, you need to do so in the least restrictive possible way.
Absolutely.
Okay? Well, if someone is wearing or holding a sign how is the jury going to see that from inside the courtroom?
Because
My
they're not
first
holding
issue
a
is that
sign.
they
They're
got
not
too
only
loud.
doing that, they're screaming and yelling and chanting.
Oh, yeah, but they can't do either. Is that really the least restrictive way to take away a constitutional right?
It is. And it's not, and look, there's no, they're allowed to organize. They're allowed to be there. They're allowed to put up
You're
their
restricting people from exercising their constitutional
Stop
rights
it.
on private property.
Okay, you can't yell
On
fire
private
in a crowded-
property.
You can't yell fire in a in a crowded movie theater, right?
What's the safety
Is that
concern?
free
There's no safety
speech?
concern. There's no
Is that
safety
free
concern.
speech? Is that free speech?
There's no safety concern here, Al.
But there is a safety concern. There's also a concern that the person's going to get a fair trial.
All
Okay,
right.
and
How
there's
about
also
the
concern-
people who actually sued Judge Cannone, who have been doing nothing but protesting Judge Cannone?
and that's that. This is part of the problem.
Aha.
This is part of the problem. Okay. Now, all of this stuff going on, and of course, now the Reeds are Reed defense is going to the Supreme Court of the United States with a
double jeopardy.
trying to get cert granted on that, which I don't think is going to happen. But nonetheless, all right. And guess what? So the scrutiny is there. They're going to take a look at it, and if a federal judge says it's okay, that's okay.
You skipped over a big point here. A big point of the people who are actually suing Judge Cannone is that they are protesting since November of 2024, Judge Cannone. They are protesting Judge Cannone. So can Judge Cannone issue an order to keep them away from the courthouse, to keep them from protesting her?
But it is also it is making it difficult for people to concentrate and things along those lines. It's fine. Okay, they're protesting Judge Cannone.
You're too quick to take away my constitutional rights.
No, I'm not.
Al,
Okay.
he's going to take away your rights.
No. Wait a minute.
He's going to take away your rights, Jones.
Wait a
Wear
minute.
those glasses.
Okay, so are you allowed to stand in front of a abortion clinic and protest people who go into an abortion clinic in New Jersey? Because I can't say that about every state now because of what's going on. But in New Jersey, am I able to like stand there and get in your face and tell you don't get the abortion? No,
Well,
I'm not allowed
get
to
in
do
somebody's
that.
face.
I'm not allowed to do that. They've set up buffer zones for it, and those have passed constitutional muster.
Are they
All right,
300
so what's the
feet? Are they 300 feet?
It's like 250. So I mean, it is across the street from the event
Across the street. Well, guess what? They're not allowed across the street here.
Okay, well, but there's across the street here because there's a library there, so they're allowed to go on that, which is also,
They're not allowed to go to the library in Dedham.
They're
No,
going to put the
I'm
food
not
trucks
talking
out of
about
business. What about the food trucks? They're going to put them out of business.
What does that got to
These
do?
people, they work. These people, they're going to like lose business if you move them up the block. Now they have to split their business between the courthouse and the protesters. I'm a big proponent of freedom of speech, but I can kind of see that this is an issue. This is like a bit of a problem. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to like do what Noriega did? You're going to blast Van Halen outside? Or like sometimes convenience stores like will blast classical music to chase teenagers away. It does seem to be an issue if they're hearing these people, does it not?
I don't even understand that analogy. No one's blasting Van Halen and putting music in the 7-Eleven parking lot because they don't want the kids congregating there. It's private property. They have the right to do that, and the kids should not be there loitering. Okay, what's the difference? I mean, that's got nothing to do with this. This is they don't want people massed around the area where witnesses are going in, people are going in.
Have you ever heard of the freaking word facetious? Go ahead.
Facetious seashells by the seashore? Is that the one?
Go ahead.
Like, the Constitution is a very delicate document.
No, it's not.
It's very
It's a living document. It's a living document.
You start damaging this thing and it all falls apart.
Oh, but please, let's not start talking about that now because we'll get into a politics conversation.
This is not politics.
Things like due process out the window and everything else.
This is freedom of speech, Al. This is the bedrock. You were at Woodstock, for goodness sake.
I was.
Of all people on this panel that should believe in free speech.
I do.
Right? right?
I
Tune
believe
in,
that
tune
there are-
out,
I
drop in,
believe-
drop out,
I
whatever it was
believe-
back in the 60s, man.
I believe there
That's
can
what
be
we're
time.
living now.
I
You got to
believe there
fight
can
the
be
power.
I believe that there can be time and place restraints, okay, and restrictions. Time and place. I shouldn't be able to blast Van Halen at 3 o'clock in the morning in
Why
my
do you keep
neighborhood.
talking about Van Halen? Let's talk
Well,
about
Tracy brought it up.
let's talk about the anti-Judge Cannone protesters who have filed the lawsuit. Why do they have to be 2.5 blocks down the street, nowhere near the courthouse? Why are they not allowed on private property? Why are they not allowed to just hold their signs and say nothing right in front of the courthouse?
No, they're going to get the opportunity to argue that in front of the federal court. And let's see what the federal court says. That's today. And let's see what they say. I guarantee you, they're going to end up being told, yeah, you have to go there. All right. You're not allowed to throw a monkey wrench into the halls of justice, man. Okay?
Well, here's the big
No monkey
problem.
wrenches.
Can I
None.
tell you, is there no conflict of interest in Judge Cannone restricting the speech of people who are protesting her?
Well, they're protesting her in the face of a trial that she's handling, which will also have detrimental effects for the people involved in the trial.
I think it's a slippery slope when we give too much power. And my father was a judge. When you give too much power to a judge who can shut down speech aimed at her, I just think that's a slippery slope.
And your
That's
father
bad.
would
That's what we would call a bad precedent.
your father would have permitted a buffer zone on abortion clinics and other places. Even people who are picketing their place of work have an area where they're allowed to be.
Al,
And an
you
area
seem
where they're
like
not
you're
allowed.
hooked on abortion today. Let's talk about
Yeah,
freedom.
but that's the only. That's the only.
This is the courthouse. Wait. This is protesting the government itself. We're restricting protest against the government itself. Where does it end? Are we not allowed to protest outside of all government buildings? Shouldn't the citizens be able to protest their government? Is not the judicial branch part of the government?
As long as it's not interfering with the business of government. Okay, it's allowed to protest. No one's saying they can't put the signs up. No one's saying you can't say F the draft and everything along those lines.
They're saying you've got to be almost like the next town over.
Oh, it's
like,
not that far. You know, you're exaggerating this so badly. It's such an exaggeration, Vinny. And I understand why you're doing it that way, but it is such an exaggeration.
Oh, because I work in the media and I cherish the First Amendment provides me an opportunity to express my viewpoints, my opinions.
Who's stopping you? Who's stopping you?
Well, it's got to be careful. It's a slippery slope, Al. Slippery slope.
That is not saying they can't protest.
A member of the government shutting down speech. Wait. Al, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at a member of the government shutting down speech, protesting that member of the government. That's exactly what this case is. It's very specific.
Well, they're a member of the judiciary. They're a member of the judiciary, which is different than a member of the government.
No, it isn't.
A little bit. Yes, it is. It's a separate branch.
It's a branch of the government.
But it's still not it's not a person that is going to be sitting there making policy for you. It's a person who's supposed to be sitting there listening to a case. And she's making a decision as to a buffer zone with regards to same because it interferes with the system that is going forward there. Okay? I don't agree that she should have a problem setting up a buffer zone, whether they're protesting her judge's law clerk, or protesting the prosecutor, or even the defense counsel. Okay? They have the right to go in there safely. They have the right to sit there and be able to do their job without having harassment. Okay? They have that right. Okay? And Karen Reed, okay, and the victims' families, everybody has a right. And I believe in that right. And if you're going to impinge upon that right, and that to me, that right is a lot more sacred, that they should get a fair trial, okay, and that the victims get a fair trial, than having somebody yelling, hey, no, judge has to go. I mean, what does that matter? That's garbage. Garbage.
Okay. So does this rule apply if we were talking about a case that was, let's say it was, I don't know, a case involving a much more broader issue across society, not about a specific person, but a bigger issue, whether it's gender-based, race-based, or something else, an issue like that. We are still going to keep everyone away from the courthouse. We're going to keep people away who are protesting the judge.
That's not.
That's
okay.
dangerous, Al. That's
but I'm not
dangerous.
advocating. I'm not advocating that. Okay.
That's what's happening, though.
I'm
That's
advocating
what's happening.
Wait
These
a minute.
people are nowhere near the courthouse.
First of
now.
all, you're coming up with something that's not even specific. All right, so let's go specifics. Okay, the trial needs to be done. The trial needs to be done without harassment, without intimidation.
Where's the evidence of the harassment?
I'm sorry?
Who's being harassed?
Well, if they're chanting at people's faces when they're going into the
Not
place,
chanting in people's faces when they go in. The jury meets at an undisclosed location.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to tell you is that anyone going into that,
brought in the back
if
of the
the
courthouse,
jurors
no one's
hear-
near the jury.
if the
No
jurors
one's near
hear
the
it,
jury at all.
if the
Facts
jurors
not in
hear it,
evidence. No, Judge
if
Jones,
the-
would you rule on this, please? He's
if the
arguing
jury
facts
hear
not
it-
in evidence.
the jurors hear it, it's no good. John O'Keefe's family doesn't deserve to have that. Okay? Doesn't deserve that. Absolutely not. And you know what? It's not fair. And setting up that buffer zone is fair. It's time and place. And there's no problem with that. They
How
want
could
to
it be
show
the
up-
least
Hey, wait a minute,
restrictive
Ben.
if
I'll
we
tell
had
you
a
what.
trial
Let them
already
show up
without
on a
incident?
Saturday. Let them show up on a Saturday when there's no court, and they can stand right in front of the friggin' steps and scream all they
I
want.
think they have.
They'll get the press. That's fine. I got no problem with that. And you got the press there, and they got their opportunity to get their 20 minutes on the news. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The trial needs to go on without any type of impingement, without any type of influence. It needs to be done right. Put the people at a position. Let them say what they want, but don't put it on my front doorstep.
It's not the front doorstep. It's not down the block. It's like down the block and then go down another block. Like the new map that I saw takes them further away from where they were. And when the restrictions were set up, everyone followed every rule to the T.
Okay.
To the T. And then the trial happens. The jury is split, right? It's a mistrial. So obviously there was no impact. The juror who came out and gave interviews and I spoke to said, yeah, no, we focused on the evidence. We focused on what we saw and heard in the courtroom, just like every other juror that I ever interviewed.
One person. Okay, so that's one out of the 16. Okay, or 12 that deliberated on that. So what's the purpose then? Is it the purpose to have a fair trial for the victim's family and a fair trial for the defendant, or is the purpose to get a bunch of people to be able to stand up and hold up?
You're changing the argument. It's First Amendment argument. It's
not a First Amendment argument.
Right
I'm not stopping them from saying. I'm not stopping them from saying what they want to say. I'm telling you where.
Is it being done in the least
You need a permit. Manner? You need a permit to do a demonstration in a town. Yes. You can't just march in the streets. Okay? You can't.
They're not marching in the streets. They're going to a government building to protest the government.
I have been to more than my share of demonstrations. And I can tell you this, that you need to have a permit. And you have to be advised of it because they got to have police protection. They got to have this. They got to have that. So is that a violation of my free speech then? Because I need to get a permit? No, it has been ruled it's not a violation of my free speech. I still get the opportunity to do it. I just do it the right way. That's all. Doesn't mean my message changes. Doesn't mean I say anything different. But I have to follow the rules. The rules say I need to have a permit.
Well,
okay.
Rules. Like rules. No, are you talking about rules by elected officials, or are you talking about a rule set by a judge? Alicia, loving Gen X words, Tanzania. Batista Friday. Thank you, Alicia. We appreciate your support, your
Yay.
passion for Fridays. This is the First Amendment, Jonesy. You go back to the 60s, right? When we were kids, back in the 60s, all those hippies, they were protesting the government, the war. It was important. It has impact. It's part of America, right? We don't like something, we protest. It's happening. But all of a sudden now, this judge doesn't want anyone anywhere near the courthouse and has not proposed any alternatives that would be less restrictive than what she has done. She has increased the restrictions on folks there.
And it's being looked at by another tribunal, and they will make the decision as to whether or not
That's what I'm arguing right now.
Well, you know what? Let me just say.
Here's the problem, though.
I'm seeing comments.
Judges protect judges.
I'm seeing comments.
Judges. That's the problem.
I'm seeing comments that I'm here to take away rights. That's such garbage. All right. I'm here to protect the rights.
You haven't let Jonesy speak. You took away his First Amendment right today.
No, I didn't. I questioned his First Amendment right with regards to the Van Halen comment. That's all. And then I was yelled at for being facetious.
I was being facetious in that, like, it is an issue in the courtroom if they can hear it. Depending upon what they say, it can be an issue. So maybe she has to do something, right? And my point when I said, what are they going to do? Like, do what they do at the 7-Elevens, like blast music to drive people away. I wasn't in no way serious about that, but my point is, what are they going to do? It does seem to be an issue. I'm a firm believer in free speech, and I have been all my life since I was a little kid and didn't know any better. And was like a snot nose and didn't really even have a right to have an opinion on things because of the era that we grew up on, because of all the protests that I saw on the news, because of the results of those protests and or the Smothers Brothers on TV saying things that maybe like people didn't like. So I'm a big proponent of that, but I can see that there's an issue here. If I'm on a jury and if I can hear them say certain things that might be meant to influence, that's a problem, right?
And Gringa pointing that out, it's because jurors can hear the chants, right? All right. So Jonesy, no vocal chants. We have a quiet zone, but we're allowed to wear our T-shirts and hold our signs. How about that?
I don't have a problem with that.
What's that?
I don't have a problem with that.
All right, but the judge does.
Well, but that's not what they're not agreeing to that. Did they say? I didn't hear any one of them say, we'll be here quiet. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, read the papers.
Ben, you're taking away
you've got to be least restrictive in the way if the issue is noise, deal with the noise.
You got to take away.
Viewers do not have X-ray specs.
Why are you condemning them to have to be silent? Okay, isn't that a violation of my First Amendment right?
Well, if you want to do it in the least restrictive manner,
shut up. Okay, that's fine.
You have a quiet zone. You have a zone where you can chant. You have a quiet zone, but in the quiet zone, you're allowed to voice your opinion with signs and with T-shirts.
I got no problem with that.
Can either of you name any other protests where people bring lawn chairs? I mean, it doesn't seem like everybody there is there to protest. It seems like, some people are there as spectators. And,
they can't spectate because they can't get in the courtroom because it's too small. There's no public space. That's another problem in the trial, by the way. We're having a public trial in a courtroom where the public can't go.
Well, that's a problem, yeah.
Come on. Yeah, that sounds quiet.
Wow.
And that's just during jury selection. No, I'm only kidding. This is from the last trial. This is from last year. I'm trying to remember at what point of the case all this was, because this is a much different situation in the front where all the people are, and they've got, I think they're holding signs at that point. So this must have been afterwards, after the trial. But it gives you an idea of the intensity outside of that courthouse. And obviously, none of this is happening. And Carrie has pointed out, I believe this is accurate. I didn't know what the exact numbers were. Last trial was 200 feet. Now it's 200 yards.
2 football fields.
From my calculations, Jonesy, but can you check the math? I think that's 3 times as far.
Yes. Yeah, the only thing seems to be missing is Michael Jackson dancing on top of an SUV. Okay, if you want to call it like a protest or whatever, it sure seems like it's become a spectator sport.
Well, people are invested. Well, here's what's going on locally, and there is a deep distrust with some members of law enforcement, and it's based upon several things. One, we saw all the fallout from Trooper Proctor. Then there was another case, another local case where a young woman's demise was determined to be self-inflicted initially. And it turns out it was not. And subsequently, the feds had to come in and indict a local police officer for the red rum of this young woman who was carrying allegedly his child, a young woman who had been groomed as a teenager. And there was a lot of corruption there. So you take that on the heels of all of this, and the level of mistrust has grown. And Massachusetts has a little bit of a history. Al, you may remember a guy named Whitey Bulger, and
Yes.
we had some crooked feds there. We had some crooked cops there, FBI problems. So there's a bit of a history. So that level of mistrust has grown. Now, in this case, obviously, and I don't think anyone would disagree with you that this has taken on a life of its own. Like, this has gone beyond anything we've ever seen before. And for a lot of people, it's the first time they've ever been involved in something like this. But when you speak with them, their beliefs are not based upon on facts that they believe. Now, these facts are disputed by the other side, and that's what the trial is about. But their beliefs are based upon certain facts. Some of the facts are indisputably true. Other facts are disputable and will be disputed at trial. But all of that has played into itself and given this case a much different look than any case I've ever covered in all the years at Court TV. My issue today is singularly about my defense of the First Amendment. I am a lawyer and I am a journalist, and I know and I have seen how quickly once anyone takes a bite out of it, it becomes a bigger bite and a bigger bite. This is not a political statement, but I remember and I recall a very short while ago, and there have been hearings on this, and I've seen what happened, where you could not post things on social media. Doctors could not post their opinions on social media. And to me, that was such an affront to everything in this country. And I said, they're private companies, right? Twitter, everything, it's a private company, so they can do whatever they want. But they were getting nudged by the government to do it. And that scares me. That scares me. Obviously, this is not as drastic as that was.
It's not even close.
Not even close. But it is the government taking action to quell speech against the government.
It's a restriction of time and
Dangerous.
place. It's a restriction of time and place. That is all. That has always been the system in this country. Always. Always.
But
And it's not unfair. And those, as long as it is, look, here's the situation, right? Let's say everybody there is anti her, and then they say anti Reed, and they let them come up close. Okay. But of course, the people who support Reed have nowhere to go. They can't be in that area. That's not right. And that is restrictive. And that is unfair. If they're going to put them, if they put them all in one area, whether you're for, against, or have no opinion, that's not unfair under the circumstances, as long as there's a legitimate basis for that restriction. That's all. I'm not advocating that they can't have signs. I'm not advocating that they can't voice their opinion. They can't scream. I have no problem with any of that. My issue is that the judge has the right to set up a time and place restriction. And that is all.
Leaving out two words. Least restrictive.
But you know what the thing is that if that is what they compel to be least restrictive, that's fine. She's being looked at. It's being appealed. If the federal court says, no, you know what, that's not, it's 200 feet, then she's got to live with it. And that's fine. And I'm all for that. Okay. Yeah. But I don't see that this instance is that, it's certainly not what you just mentioned, where you're coming in and restricting people's comments on social media and things along those lines. That I have absolute huge problems with. And I have no problem with people demonstrating. I've been involved in demonstrations. I have been the victim of demonstrations with regards to, because I represent police officers.
That's right. I've seen that.
So, you know, I mean, I've had people attack my car. I've had people set up a gauntlet where I go through where they're spitting, yelling, screaming, and all this other kind of stuff.
And that's just his in-laws.
And those are relatives. So you can only imagine. And those are the clients I was representing. But the you know, the situation is that it's not going to in any way hinder their right.
Are you worried though? Are you at least a little more concerned? Like the restricting of speech applies across the board, right? You're protesting a private business, you're protesting a clinic, whatever, right? To use your example, but here it's a protest of the government.
I have no problem protesting the government. I protest.
No, but I think you have to apply real scrutiny to limiting speech that is protesting the government itself.
But that's not limiting the speech. It's a time and place restriction, which, see, everybody seems to keep saying to themselves, oh, we can't. They're not saying you can't wear a shirt that says F the draft.
600 yards is a long way away.
No, the 200 yards.
200 yards is a long way away from that.
600 yards is a long way to go. I will tell you that. I agree with you. 600.
You got to go down the block and around the corner, like not even in sight. By the way, Cindy Lagasse says the jurors say they never saw the crowds and only heard them once at lunchtime during deliberations. At lunchtime, maybe they should keep the windows closed.
You know, is it air conditioned in there? Isn't it like? Is it a modern, like, you know, courtroom in that regard?
It's a historic courthouse,
right?
It's a disaster for like heat and air conditioning.
There's one courtroom that doesn't have air conditioning. The other one, it's on the fritz sometimes.
And you know, the problem is a lot of those older courtrooms like we have in Bergen County and stuff like that have like wall units, window units for air conditioning, which make a lot of noise. And so a lot of times
they make noise that would drown out.
And you know what they do? What the judge does? He turns it off. Wow. Turns it off, Vin, and you're in there, and it's like Inherit the Wind with your, you know, you're sitting there with the friggin' fan and doing your little closing argument. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. And it's a nightmare. So, you know, I can appreciate that. And opening the windows may be the only way to get some air in there. So,
there's one thing that gets me going.
Restrictions on time and place have already
grinds my gears. You start messing with my First Amendment, it grinds my gears.
I'm not saying you can't say whatever you want. You can't say fire in a crowded movie theater. Do we agree that there should be restriction on that?
On what?
yelling fire in a crowded movie theater.
I haven't been to a crowded movie theater in a long. Nobody goes to the movies anymore.
Okay.
I don't even
Have you
know
been
how
to
to
the
go to
theater
the movie.
lately?
Broadway show.
You can't even get crowded. Everyone's sitting back in their lounge thing like this. It's never crowded.
Okay, there are always been restrictions. That's why we have defamation cases. That's why we have all these other kinds of things, because there are restrictions on what you can say and
They
what you
didn't restrict the folks at Johnny Depp's trial. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, they did keep them away. Didn't they have a distance on the thing on that, if I remember correctly? Because they were in another position where they were able to bring Johnny in and everything else.
They're in front of the courthouse. But yeah, for entering and exiting, just so they wouldn't bum rush the people.
So
here we go. By the way, thank you, Cindy. Dr. Ball Butter. A document by definition is not alive. By the way, I want to point out we're live streaming on my Facebook page, my YouTube, my Twitch, and my X. But we're also live streaming on the Court TV YouTube channel.
We love the Court TV YouTube channel.
Folks, if you haven't been over there, go over there. You can actually become a member like Dr. Ball Butter and get all these special treats. I don't know. They have all these special privileges that you get as a member, and there's different levels of membership. So you want to check that out. So a document by definition is not alive.
What?
You said that the Constitution is a living, breathing document.
Well, it is a living, breathing document because there are things that have happened since the Constitution has been ratified, okay, that have changed. And therefore, it's a living, breathing document. It always changes based on things that come forward. We have from 21 to 18 years of age to vote, things along those lines. The document has changed as life has changed. Okay, so it is constantly evolving, which is the way a document should be with regards to that.
Kelly Steffi, thank you so much, Kelly. Independent journalists are being threatened with arrest. Bias Bev should be recused. Well, here's the other backdrop to all this, right? Is that Turtle Boy, who was the one who basically, I would say the initial folks who came to the support of Karen Reed were all followers of Turtle Boy, who's a live streamer, a video blogger, has been arrested and has been charged with witness intimidation. Now, his defense there also is First Amendment. That's a case that will be adjudicated inside of a courtroom. My guess is a jury will figure it all out. But that's another case that people look at and say, my goodness, we're going after journalists. We're going after protests.
Okay.
That is feeding the fire.
But we're also
in a case, wait, Al, just let me finish my thought and then I'll zip it. But in a case where the defendant and her supporters believe that there is a government conspiracy, you have people who are claiming government conspiracy now being arrested and pushed away from the courthouse. And they look at that like exactly what I told you. So instead of giving people more trust in the government, it is creating less trust in the government. And to me, that's another problem and more of the fallout of everything that's happening at this courthouse. Now I'll zip it.
Okay. Since the days of John Peter Zenger, okay, where we have taken the position to protect the reporters and the people there and that are there, the fourth estate that are going forward and doing these things. It's fine. The problem is that nowadays the lines are blurred as to what constitutes a reporter or what constitutes a member of the press. All right. In the days, when Vinnie and you and I, were Court TV, when I was on radio and everything else and doing that kind of stuff, you were on Channel 10 News, you were a reporter. You were designated as a reporter. And then exactly. Okay. But nowadays with podcasts and things are going along that like that, everybody thinks that they're a reporter. Okay. I mean, anyone who writes for the Hurley Home Shopper thinks that they get press privileges. And that's where things have gotten a little bizarre with regards to restrictions, because you've got people now that say, well, I'm a member of the press. Well, why are you a member of the press? Well, I have a podcast, or I have I'm a this, I'm an influencer, I'm that, the other thing. So that has morphed what the definition of the freedom of the press actually is. And it's interesting to see where that goes. But that's hence the reason why the Constitution is a living, breathing document. It will always try to encompass and address issues that come that are, now problems that didn't happen in 1787.
So,
all right?
from my perspective, and Jonesy, I'm interested in what you have to say about this. I see no difference in the rights of independent journalists or journalists who work for big corporations like I do, or people who are doing their own thing. I see no difference. It is just because you don't work for somebody else, just because you don't work for a huge company, to me does not detract from your rights or your ability to be a journalist or call yourself a journalist. I welcome all of them. I think they are all part of it. And I think the more that we have, the more we can keep power in check. But that's just me.
I do not welcome them, and I do not feel that way. It's a part of my curmudgeonliness as an old school kind of broadcaster. But I've always felt that, a lot of people wrap themselves in the cloak of I'm a journalist. And so where does it end? Like a 13-year-old with a computer who declares himself a reporter. I know it may seem unfair, especially, that I'm on a podcast, to people that listen to podcasts and, are into that kind of thing. But I think it used to be black and white. You work for the Star Ledger, you're a reporter, you have an editor that you run things by, you vet things to find out,
you wear a hat like this and you get the scoop,
and you have to have the press thing on the side there as well.
Press.
Except mine always said pool. So I do have I do see a distinction. Now, how do you define? Now, there are, I'm sure there are people that, try their best and are legitimate reporters who don't work for, as you say, a major company, but I wouldn't say a major company. I would say a respected newspaper, a respected television station, or I do have an issue with that. I'm more on Al's side on this one,
because the thing is this, Jonesy, you, me, and Vinny, we're broadcasters. We worked in the industry. Okay. We made our bones, starting out doing, crap stuff and then finally getting on air. Okay. And working from that situation. It's a big difference. And one of the things about being a journalist is accountability. And that's where
right.
That's what you're bringing forward, is that the accountability is really a kind of a key situation here. Anyone can spew off rumors and this, that, the other thing, but they can't.
You're an editorialist, are you not?
But see, the thing is this: even an editorialist that writes for the New York Times or works for the Wall Street Journal is, like you said, vetted. Okay. Also, they're looked at. Their pieces are not just strung out there. Okay, from stream of consciousness. They're researched and they're done. And then if there is a mistake in them, they're accountable. Okay, how do you hold somebody who has got these 38 million podcasts and stuff like that accountable? You can't.
Well,
okay?
let's and again, accountability.
I always felt the internet was the wild, wild west, so that feeds into my thoughts on that. But go ahead, Vinny.
But accountability is if someone's being defamed, you can sue them for defamation. You can sue someone from a podcast. You can sue someone who tweeted something. You can sue a big corporation
if you can find them. If you can find them. Well,
right. It's like anything else. But and then on the other hand,
it's not like anything else. No. I know where the New York Times is. I know where the Wall Street Journal is. I know where the Star.
And they haven't made major mistakes in reporting.
And they've been sued.
Yeah, but they've made major mistakes and have not been sued and just say, "Oh yeah, we were wrong," or they just move on.
Most of the time they get sued. Most of the time they get sued.
If they've defamed someone.
And if
But
they
if
don't, and if they do make
And a lot of times it's a public figure.
they
And a
do
lot of
print,
times it's difficult.
they do print retractions, and they do print that mistakes. They do that all the time.
On the bottom of page 90 is where the
It's not
retraction
on
is.
the page 90.
After 15 months of headlines, the retraction is on the bottom of the line.
And on the flip side of that is nobody reads the retractions.
Exactly. The glarer, the courthouse, the
but at least there is
glarer.
a process. There is an editor. There is a company to be found and sued.
You can sue an individual.
Yeah.
You can. And the individual, the other thing, you say there's accountability, but then they also have their own lawyers as well who can defend them, right? Whereas, Johnny Tweeter doesn't have like in-house counsel. He's gonna have to pay for a lawyer when he gets sued. The glarer, the courthouse belongs to the people, period. Cannone works for the Massachusetts taxpayer. She has no constitutional grounds to rob the people of the right to speak and express themselves.
And she's not doing that. She's not doing that. I mean, like, people, wake up, okay? They are not saying you can't protest. They have a time and place restriction. That's all. That's all. I mean, I'm so tired of looking at these comments going, oh my God, you're against free speech. I'm totally for free speech. I was at a punk rock band, for God's sakes. Okay. I was at Woodstock, for God's sakes. Okay.
I think you've forgotten your roots,
I protested tons of things.
Al, you've gone corporate. Look at your tie. You've gone corporate.
No, that's because I got to go to a courtroom and require you to wear it.
He now is the man, right? He used to fight the man. He is the man. Yeah. Gringa has a great point here. Thank you, Gringa.
Thank you,
if the jurors can't look at media during the trial, they shouldn't be influenced by people chanting for one side or the other outside. Like, here's the thing, right? If there's this much concern about the jury being influenced, why aren't they sequestered? Should they, should they be sequestered for 3 months?
That's a wonderful question, but that doesn't stop the situation going on from the courthouse. So.
Well,
history has told us, Vinny, okay, that the situation under these circumstances, okay, is that there is time
to civil rights and all the revolution fights. World War I and World War II, I'll always knows who is who. It's this day in history, this day in history, history. Now let's listen to his story.
What's the story? We didn't get to see the pictures. Go ahead.
We've got April 4th. Okay, April 4th. Very, very big day in history, and a very, very big day in true crime history. April 4th in 1841, President William Henry Harrison died. First president to die in office. Okay, he was, the inauguration was March 4th. He gave a 2-hour speech in very, very rainy, cold weather and developed pneumonia, and then passed away 30 days later. And then John Tyler became the president, was sworn in at that point. He was 67 years of age at that time. It's the longest inauguration speech in the history of this country, and it took his life. And
it's the longest speech in the shortest presidency.
Yeah, exactly. And his grandson would later become the 23rd president of the United States, Benjamin Harrison, who was a Civil War hero.
Did he keep his speech tighter?
I'm sorry?
Did he keep his speech tighter?
He kept it, not only did he keep it tighter, he kept it indoors. So it was a smart move on his part. Most importantly, in April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King is assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, by James Earl Ray, and a tremendous loss to this country. I would advocate to anyone who gets to Atlanta to go to the Civil Rights Museum there. It's unbelievable. And then make your trip over to see where Martin Luther King's tomb is and his gravesite is. with his wife, and you can see the church across the street where he got his start. It's just an incredible experience, a horrible thing. And James Earl Ray then took off, got to Canada, and they didn't catch him until he was in, believe it or not, London. That's where they finally caught him. And there's still issues as to whether or not he was the one who did it. There's questions that are going back and forth, but I'm convinced that he was the true assassin on that. With regards to true crime history, okay, I mean, that certainly is part of it. But if you remember last day on March 28th, which was the last show we did, I talked about the fact that this piece of garbage by the name of Mosley passed away. And he was the one that had red rummed Kitty Genovese, the woman that had made the screams and everything else. Well, on this day, okay, on this day, Kitty Genovese was executed. She was red rummed. Okay, so this was the situation with regards to it in 1964. So it ties in on that. Another little interesting story that came up on this day in 1958. Cheryl Crane, the 14-year-old daughter of Lana Turner, who was a famous movie star, had red rummed her mother's boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, with a knife. They were apparently Lana and Johnny were in a fight. Johnny was a mob guy. He was an enforcer, okay, for the Mickey Cohen gang in L.A., big womanizer and everything like that. She witnesses the fight going back and forth. She says that he threatened to kill his mother, to kill her mother, and she ran in with a knife. And the story is that Stompanato ran into her and ran into the knife, and then he expired at the scene.
Wow. Any charges?
No. They had a inquest, that coroner inquest that went on, and there's a ton of testimony and everything along those lines, and it was ruled justifiable homicide.
Stand your ground. Stand your ground.
So it was a situation with that. Stompanato, there's to give you kind of an idea about what this guy was. All right, he was such a womanizer that Frank Sinatra was afraid that he was going to take Ava Gardner away from him, and he went to Mickey Cohen and he said, "Mickey, you got to do me a favor. You got to keep Stompanato, from poaching into my territory here with Ava Gardner." And Mickey Cohen said, "I'm not going to talk to him, and you should go back to your wife." So,
wow. How about that?
So that's what happened on
the traditional mob way. You have to go back to the wife eventually.
Yeah. WW writes, Al needs to take a breath so Captain Beefheart can weigh in. Who's Captain Beefheart?
Well, I know who that is. It's a famous musician.
It's funny, musicologists like ourselves, we all know the name, but I can't tell you anything else about Captain Beefheart either.
Oh, Captain Beefheart,
that's an actual person.
Captain Beefheart was on Saturday Night Live, okay, and sadly had done a performance where no one clapped.
Wow.
So it's a group. Captain Beefheart is a
group.
It
was a guy. It was a guy. It was a musician.
Interesting. Yeah. I never heard of him. This is from Karma Dharma. Does the victim's family want a fair trial? I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do. I think everyone wants a fair trial. I think at the end of the day, you want the truth to come out. It's just the two sides don't agree as to what the truth is. So that's the gist of it inside the courtroom here this time around. What do you think? I can't believe. I believe that. Oh, let's get to this first. Zarcasm. This is Zarcasm. Al, this is my first time watching this podcast, and I already strongly feel you are biased. Can you open your mind at all? Canton is absolutely corrupt, including anti-Bev, which is what some folks call Judge Cannone.
See, what's interesting to me that my mind is not open, but their minds are closed. Okay, I mean, it's like if him saying that means his mind is closed. Okay, he's not an open-minded person. I am an open-minded person. I'm willing to hear both sides with regards to
sarcasm is a lovely lady.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that under the circumstances that their minds are closed, it's corrupt. Okay, that's all they say. That's what they throw to me. They don't say anything else. Doesn't make any sense.
Ellen Mimi Mommy, the First Amendment is the rule. It is the first rule. Does it have more weight because it's first, Al?
Does well,
You would
okay.
think it should if it's the first thing they thought of, right?
Well, I'm trying to figure out that what is it? It's the first one, so it's the rule. What was that? What was the exact quote on that?
The First Amendment is the rule. It is the first rule.
Okay. Well, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm going to throw this out there, isn't the first rule, "You shall have no God before I am the Lord our God, and you shall have no God other than no other gods before me"? Wasn't that the first one, Vin? I think that's called the 10 Commandments. Didn't that kind of come first?
Well, maybe, but
Okay.
that's a big one, right? So that's
So
a
the
big
first
one, right?
commandment, that's
So
in
the
Exodus.
Right. The first of the 10 Commandments is probably the most important, right?
You shall have no
The
other
first
gods before me.
Amendment's the most important.
You can't even say the first one on the
What?
podcast, can you? Thou shalt not.
Oh, that's right. Al is correct in this argument, says Brianna CC Bree. I don't know which
Thank you.
argument, but
Thank
one
you.
of them.
Thank
One of
you.
them.
I mean, it
Thank
could be
you,
like
thank
it could be like a game show, you know. I mean, like it's turned into such a spectacle. Like, you know, they could stand outside the courthouse listening to it in real time, and they could do things like good answer when the trial is going on.
Dolores Del Signore, Nicholas. Why do Vinny and Al have to argue? Well, that's because we're lawyers. That's what we do. We were trained to do that. Can't they agree to have different opinions? Yes, I agree. Al can be wrong from time to time. Jonesy, be the voice of reason.
I was thinking earlier, actually, that I should start wearing a referee's shirt.
Well,
but I wouldn't look. I would at my size. I wouldn't look good in stripes.
Sarcasm is back. The only way this trial can be done right is to move it to a new venue with a new judge. I don't want it moved to a new venue.
But you know, by the way, like, you know, I'm just going to go back to something that Jonesy said with regards to one of the commandments that we cannot say technically on YouTube. Okay, so, you know, thou shalt not red rum, right? Okay, believe it or not, that's number 6.
Is it number 6?
Yeah.
It shows how much I know about church. I was at church once, and it was because I had a crush on a girl.
Number 10 comes in for you. You shall not covet thy neighbor's wife.
Oh, I've coveted my neighbor's wife a few times.
Well, there you go. So let's go over the ones that you've violated. So we've got number 10, okay, and
now take my neighbor's wife.
Please, right.
Please.
So number 10 is that, but number 6 is thou shalt not red rum.
Interesting. Number 1 is the one you said, right?
You shall have no other God before me.
Right. So if that's the first commandment is the most important of all commandments, then perhaps the first of the amendments should be the most important of all amendments. I think a lot of us look at it that way, but you know, I don't know. There can be different interpretations. Just trying to make sure we get to all these great comments and super chats. Oh, by the way, folks, if you like this shirt, we've got plenty of others in the Vinnie Originale True Crime merch shop.
Hey, everybody. I've got something for your body. For your body. You can wear it by yourself or with Frankie Valli. It's True Crime merch from Vinnie Originale. It's True Crime merch. It's True Crime merch. It's True Crime merch from Vinnie Originale. From Vinnie Originale.
May I say on the shirts and stuff like that, the Vinnie Originale that appears on the back of the shirt, inside, replacing the itchy tag. There is no tag. It actually says it on the shirt itself. The font everything about it is so classy.
And
when
the
you order
disco,
something-
the disco 92 song that goes with it is even more of a,
And also the fabulous note that you get, the thank you note,
Yes.
when you order merchandise, I thought was a very nice touch.
Very nice touch. And what you're looking at here is great for the summer, kids, with all this warm weather. This is the Tangent beach towel.
That's
So-
beautiful.
and that's actually my outline, which is very nice. That because most of you want to see me dead, so they did that for me.
I used to see those all the time when I first moved into Asbury Park.
So please check out the Vinnie Originale. I'm sure our great mod squad will put the link in the chat.
We love the
Order
mod-
in the chat. Order in the chat. Don't dare attack. We've got order in this chat. The mod squad is on the job, helping us to keep it clean. The mod squad is on the job, always so nice and never mean.
All right. Big thanks to Gen X, Frankie Figs, Jennifer Sube, Ashley Bouchard on Facebook. Getting it done each and every time. Our mod squad, best in the business. Best in the business. All right. We've got more comments we got to get to, guys. Let's get to Kansas Sofa Juror. Great handle, by the way. If Judge Cannone was elected versus appointed, this whole case would be going differently, in my opinion. That's interesting. Because we cover trials all across the country. Some jurisdictions, judges are elected. In Georgia, we have elected judges. In Massachusetts is like New Jersey. It's a government appointment. So the people really have no power directly in choosing their judges, which is interesting. Do you think it would be different if she had to run for re-election?
you know what? I would hate to think so.
That's the right answer. That's the right answer. Because a judge, and that's why I'm not comfortable with elected judges. I understand.
I had never thought about it before, but as you mentioned it, I just thought the same thing. I don't know if it's such a good thing to be elected, because then you have to wonder if the person's worrying about, like, what's going to happen in the next election, like the district attorney, who wanted to work with the Menendez brothers. And now there's a new district attorney, and there was some concern about like an election. I don't know if I really think a judge should face that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two arguments here. I'll lay out the pros and the cons for both. My father was a judge. He was a federal judge, so he wasn't elected. He was appointed.
Right.
But my father always conceded it's politics. It's a political appointment, right?
Yeah.
You got to know somebody. You got to get the name in, and then they vet you and everything. But there's a political process to all of it. You're not anointed by God, right? So to me, that's great. It takes one step away from someone pandering for votes. However, it does remove accountability on the other hand. So there is a yin and a yang to it.
But see, I disagree with that, because what happens is once they become judges, they have to swear off politics. They're not allowed to go to political events. They're not allowed to go to anything like that. They can't be seen, congregating at the Democratic Party or the Republican Party or anything along those lines. And so they do have to take a step back, which gives them that ability to, not be swayed party line wise. Not saying that they don't have their own little foibles and beliefs. That's true. But I do think that being appointed is far better than being elected, because let's remember, what is the key aspect of people running for election? Raising money. Okay. Yeah. And that's what they got to do. These elections are expensive. You have to come in with, maybe $25,000 of your own money, seed money to get started. And then you're begging people for money. Okay. Whether you're a judge, you're a congressman, or you're a councilman. You've got to raise money. And to me, I would rather the judge is paying attention to the case than wondering about doing a fundraiser so that they can get some funds so that they can put signs up, 200 yards from the courthouse saying, "Reelect me."
Charma Lily,
Do not squeeze Sharma Lily.
Charma Lily.
Timothy Chalamet, that's who I want to have play me when we do the Tangent podcast, the movie.
The movie.
I want Timothy Chalamet.
I want Val Kilmer.
Oh. Now on the flip,
Nice.
now on the flip side, all you see is law enforcement. So what if the jurors are now afraid to find her not guilty because all they see is law enforcement presence and no one else? How about that? That's interesting. That's an interesting argument because now the courthouse is surrounded by Massachusetts state troopers.
Well, doesn't that go on at any case where somebody like attacks a police officer, or maybe he's left deceased, and the police show up at the trial?
Right.
Well,
They're saying, like, okay, is this a goose gander argument that's being made by Sharma Lily?
Well, that would make 7 consecutive weeks that we've discussed the goose and the gander.
The goose and the gander. I think it's a nice point. I think it's a nice point. I think it's interesting.
I think we got another T-shirt idea there, Vin.
Goose or gander.
All about the merch.
It's all about the merch. The merch. All right, I'm just going to try to quickly scroll to get current on these comments. I'm currently 30 minutes behind, so just give me a moment here. Great conversation. By the way, just again, I want to make it really clear to folks the basis of my passion today and Al's passion. I'm not going to speak for Al, but I'll speak for myself. Al can certainly speak for himself and for Jonesy.
Al can speak for me.
No, I'm only kidding. The passion comes from me. It's about the First Amendment, and I've done this in a lot of cases where there's been a limitation on reporting, where there's a limitation on access. It was the same thing with the Delphi case. The limitations there by the judge in that case, I thought, crossed the line. And I think Judge Cannone has crossed the line here because I don't think she has taken the time, and it's an ex parte hearing where it all happens, by the way. But she hasn't taken the time to try to figure out what is the least restrictive manner in which I can accomplish the goal that I want to accomplish. Okay. I think it's just a big boom, get them out, push them back. We can't have anything. I want them away, rather than, okay, how can I have them as close as possible and not interfere in the way I believe they're interfering. And it seems like it's just an audible issue, which tells me a silent zone would be a least restrictive alternative to 600 feet away from the courthouse. But that's just me.
So you let him stand out there, but you put a muzzle on him.
Yeah, you put a muzzle on him. You speak with your signs.
This is the problem we have with trials of celebrities. Okay, when there's a celebrity, this is the problem that we end up having. So it's something that's going to have to be dealt with more and more often now, because that's really what happens. Everyone becomes a cause celeb, and every matter is going to have to be looked at from that standpoint. So, and just remember, celebrity is one of the Vinnie Originality T-shirts that you can buy.
And yes, absolutely. So Alessi never sleeps. Marissa J, thank you so much. So why will we limit the people that can report? Let the public be the jury and finder of fact. Why does the court decide who that is? I'm trying to follow this exactly.
I don't understand the question.
Right.
Because the judge doesn't decide. You get called to jury duty based on different states have different formulas, but your driver's license in New Jersey, when you have a license, then you are on a list, and then that's how the jury panels get selected. And then you go and you sit in a room, and then you go in, and then you are interviewed. Okay, what's called voir dire, to get to the truth, to see if you can be fair and impartial with regards to this matter that's in front of you. The judge only has say on who can be removed for cause, okay, but has no other say with regards to the placement of the jurors. So I don't understand that question.
So I'm looking at any other way to interpret this. If this is a question of access on who can report, Oh, I see. I see. So she's saying the people that can report for jury duty, I guess, is what she's talking about. I'm thinking report who can be a reporter on the case. I get it. Yeah. So yeah, you have to. It has to be some level of randomization. It's not just who shows up at the courthouse, because then you're going to have people who may show up and volunteer for jury duty, who may be more likely to have some sort of an agenda, whether they reveal it or don't reveal that agenda. So I do like the randomness of the process. I do like that. Mary D, thank you. Maybe time for a deep breath and some tunes. So this was from a while ago, so I think it was right around the time where we played some tunes. So good call, Mary D. Kelly Steffi again. Tom CPU's footage from last trial was used in the Discovery ID documentary. Okay, Tom CPU's footage from the last trial was used in. Who's Tom CPU? Do we know who that is?
Somebody with a video cell phone.
Okay, cell phone.
Right?
Tom
Footage.
CPU. I don't know what the CPU's footage is.
I don't know, but I just got my tax returns back from my CPA, and I said, why is my phone number on my tax returns? He goes, no, that's what you owe. So
Nicole Kelly, what about paparazzi that taunt? How are they vetted?
well, paparazzi is, you know, they are mostly independent, and they live on getting pictures or something along those lines, and then they sell them to TMZ and to other places like that. So they're basically.
Furthermore, do you really vet somebody who's taking pictures?
Well, that's usually what the paparazzi to me has always been the ones taking the photographs, sitting in a tree, and flying over someone's house or something.
Like Monkey on the Lou Grant show. He wasn't a paparazzi, but he was the photographer. He was a long-haired guy who would hide in trees to get pictures. There was a Lou Grant TV drama after Mary Tyler Moore.
That's right.
So, and the paparazzi, the way it works, I believe in most cases, is that the PR people for the stars tip off the paparazzi that they're going to be somewhere until you reach a certain level of stardom, and then you don't have to do that anymore. But I think
that's how we find out about so many of these anonymous donations that stars make.
Right.
Beautiful messy ball. She's only getting away with it because it's a small town. Imagine her trying to do this in New York City. It wouldn't fly or be possible. To enforce maybe.
Well, you wouldn't really need it in New York City because, the jury would be on the 11th floor.
They apparently they could hear the chanters during Harvey Weinstein's trial.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And you because your crew had a hotel across the street.
We had a hotel across the street, and we had people in the courtroom.
That was the most bizarre place that we filmed that we were shooting court TV from.
I thought that was excellent.
Oh my God! I wasn't there. Right next to Chinatown, so we got some great food.
Right.
Shaz, how do we hold you guys accountable? Turtle Boys come with facts and receipts, untruths and gaslighting on court TV every day by randos with sus motives. I don't know. I guess I don't know. When you say you guys, do you mean court TV or do you mean the three of us? Right.
Originally, I thought he meant us. And you don't. We're not vetted. We just he is
unvetted.
I mean, this isn't court TV proper. This is.
I like Tony Rando. He was very good in The Odd Couple, and so that's where we're going from there.
Thank you, Shaz. Leslie, Marissa J. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. MLK. Great quote.
Yes, and let's all remember that today, the death of Martin Luther King was an absolute tragedy to this country.
Respectfully, your views on legitimate journalism need to be readjusted as content creators and podcasters are telling the true story and not beholden to the mainstream media machine, independent from law. Ferrio.
Okay, so that may be true for many of them. It may be true for 90% of them, but the internet is the Wild West. Anybody can just do a podcast.
Yeah. Any three random people can just.
Right. How the hell do you think I got here? You know, like the guy with the funny glasses and the hat.
Rhino girl, thou shalt not love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. Thou shalt love the Lord. This is the first and great commandment. Thank you, Rhino girl. And I tried to do the Rhino girl thing here. Rhino girl.
Didn't I see that?
All right, before we run out of time, guys, I got to quickly go through here. I want to make sure we don't miss any of these. Kylie Wood, happy Friday. Thank you for all your time. Thank you so much. We've got Tammy Martin. Is there such rule as defendant intimidation? O'Keefe's brother is killing Karen with his stare down. Al, 10 seconds to answer that.
That if you have that kind of a situation, they generally will say something to him. If you go to the court officer, they will do something along that line.
Tracy Fagan, was the Star Ledger around when the Constitution was written? No, it was normal people reporting, and the mainstream media is dead, says Tracy.
That's not
Star
true.
Ledger was damn close.
Yeah, very, very close. And by the way, that's why I brought up John Peter Zenger up earlier. So look him up, folks, and you'll see where we get freedom of press from.
Zinger was well, here we go.
In Hackensack, he had a publishing in Hackensack, New Jersey.
Piche. Oh my goodness, we've got to find this. A young Jose Baez proposed to his girlfriend on Sally Jesse. I need to find that video if that's true.
Well, you know what? I saw the video the other day of what's her name, Daybell on Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, she was on Wheel. I think she was on 2 game shows. She was in the Mrs. Texas competition.
I saw that one. I didn't remember Wheel of Fortune. I didn't remember seeing that.
Unbelievable. All right, I think I am current, and we are just out of time here. All right, thank you so much for all the comments. Thank you to our great mod squad. Thank you to Court TV for simulcasting, and thank you everyone for watching. And God bless the First Amendment. Wait, I got some text messages really quick. Oh my goodness. Okay. Tom CPU is a YouTuber. Okay. Gotcha. Tom CPU. He films the crowds. Gotcha. I probably met him when I was out there. By the way, there is video. Maybe in the next one, we'll take a look at Jose Baez proposing to his girlfriend and Sally Jesse. That's too great. All right. Al, quickly, where can people find you?
Hasta la vista, La Tanginistas. See me on X, okay, at Legal Weapon 3 and Monday night with Vinny 8 to 9 on Court TV, okay, closing arguments.
Jonesy, where can people find you?
GlennJones.net or GlennJones549 on the Facebook.
All right, you can find me every night, 8 to 10 live, 2 hours of live true crime on Court TV. Say goodnight, Jonesy.
Good night, Jonesy.
See all of you in court. Somebody say tangent, tangent. Somebody say podcast, podcast. Tangent, tangent. Podcast, podcast. This is the Tangent Podcast. Good night, everyone. Good night. Thank you for all your support. We are the Tangent True Crime Podcast. We'll see all of you in court. Somebody say tangent.